don't say stuff like that.
Whoa.
Okay. So yeah, no. What I was going to say is I think it would be valuable if we take a look at some of the rules and settings that I talked about in the Groups article, and I know you guys talked about it on the show the last couple of times. So we'll just go through that stuff again.
Yeah, I'm following your lead.
Super valuable. Cool. Good. What's happening, Awesemo NFL fans? Welcome to the NFL Strategy Show Top Stacks Edition. Terry McBride here with Gundacker. Gun, what are we taking a look at today? We've got all kinds of good stuff to go through here with different rules and settings for FC, getting into some top stacks. We're going to talk about them from an optimal perspective, from a leverage perspective, FanDuel, DK. We're going to go back and forth through some of it. But first off, how you doing as we're getting into the weekend here, wrapping up a busy week? I've gotten into the NFL slate a little bit. Looks like a really exciting one. I'm psyched to talk about it with you. What are you seeing kind of off the top, and how you doing, buddy?
NFL week 11, man. It has flown by. But yeah, I kind of reserve till the end of the week to really dive in myself with NBA being so active during the week. And then it feels like the last couple of weekends, NFL slates don't really start until the weekend with some of the news and ifs and outs over there as well. But at first glance, looks like we can decide on if we believe Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are back. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs paid off last week, and go back to that. A couple of those top end stacks that continue to make sense. And I'm also a little bit curious with the Cowboys connections.
Little bit curious there. Yeah. I mean, if we're looking at the Vegas board, we've got that one like super standout game, and then another one in the 50s, and then a lot of kind of also ran type game totals to choose from. So we're going to get into that. We're going to pick and choose a couple of them. We'll build a couple lineups out here with Fantasy Cruncher. We're brought to you by Jock Market, you guys. If you haven't checked them out, I really encourage you to do it. It's a really fun site. We'll get into a little bit more about them in a little bit. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. We've got some free stuff on the site as always. Today, it looks like Week 11 player rankings for NFL, NBA player rankings, UFC pro plays, and NHL player projections. Also, if you're playing NBA DFS tonight, make sure and check out Adam Scherr's NBA deep dive article. If you guys, put it this way, if you guys are playing NBA DFS and you're not reading that every single day, you are missing the big picture. Adam takes a really, really long look at the slate and goes into incredible detail in the deep dive article. It's free on the site every day, deeper than you'll get in any other site, I guarantee you. So check that out. I'll do the next one too. We've got a couple packages on the site as well, guys. You know that you're able to get to all the different tools, the content by signing up, subscribing at the site, right? $29.95 a week for the platinum package gets you access to NBA, NFL, NHL, college basketball, college football. There's a lot going on. This is the right time of year to take advantage of the platinum plan. $29.95 a week. So if you're entering $5 contests, that's 6 $5 contests during the week. It's gonna pay for itself, you guys. But if you're not looking for the full-blown package, you only want to get into NFL, this is an NFL show. Our NFL Weekly is only $14.95. The Express is $3.95 a week. Pretty affordable price points. If you're into college basketball, your first week of college basketball, if you use the promo code Coach K when you sign up for an Awesemo college basketball package, your first week's going to be $5 if you use Coach K as your promo code. All right, business is conducted. Oh, that's only valid through Saturday, November 20th, by the way. Business conducted. We'll get into Jock Market in a little bit, but Gun, I think a good place to start, we were talking about a little bit before the show, is maybe let's get into some of how do we set up Fantasy Cruncher, right? When we're talking about building these stacks in these groups, I do it a lot through FC, right? I set a few rules and then I build out my groups. And I write a free article every week where I go through every single team with the recommended groups. I update it on Sunday with boost recommendations. And I like to get a broad distribution of players. But I control it all with the limit rules and the stacking rules that we find under position stacks. So are there specific ones that you want to bring up? Like, are there ones that you use every single week, regardless of what the slate looks like? And if so, what are those? Like, what are some of your go-to rules and limits that you put in there?
Now, I don't have any general rule of thumbs week to week. I tend to put as much of my input as possible in the opto on Cruncher. I'm still a baby to Cruncher. I read your article to kind of get some hints, but I usually just will create the groups for the key player quarterbacks and go from there. I don't really stick to the rules and you know, the I do some limit rules, you know, no two running backs from the same game, something like that.
Yeah.
But no, I don't get too crazy there. I usually just put my fingerprints on the groupings, and then I'll go batch by batch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a couple different approaches, and it's something that you'll hear a lot of the guys say. You know, some of the questions we get all the time are, what kind of uniques do you use? What kind of randomness do you use? What do you use for groups? What do you use for rules? It all depends. It really all depends. Fantasy Cruncher is a tool. It's a calculator. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. You're going to get out of it what you ask it for. So whatever we're asking for sometimes varies person to person. Sometimes for each person, it varies slate to slate. For me, I do have some saved rules that I put into Fantasy Cruncher that I typically do go back to because it gives just kind of the structure, the shape of my groups, and then I build out the groups with like you were saying, the key player being the quarterback, and then all of the skill players that go along with it in varying combinations. But some of the ones that I use, just to go through a few of them out, if people out there are wondering, I typically don't like to have my quarterback and my defense from the same team, just in the idea that if it's going to be a shootout kind of a game, I'm going to need his defense to be giving up points back to the other team. So I don't necessarily want to go with that. So I have a rule to restrict my quarterback and my defense from being from the same team. I have a limit rule for where I'm getting quarterback and two skill players, but no more than two skill players from the same team. I have a rule that's going to force a run back, and then I can add exceptions to that if I don't want run backs from some teams. Sometimes you can group that out. Sometimes you can use the rules on that. One that you mentioned, not having multiple running backs from the same team, is typically one that I like. Not having multiple running backs from the same game is also typically one that I like. So just kind of trying to block off some of what FC is going to give me. But like you said, I kind of like to let the optimizer fly in a lot of cases, right? We're really looking to, that's what the optimizer does. It's going to crunch out these top point per dollar based on the algorithm lineups. So really, in a lot of cases, we do want to let Fantasy Cruncher be Fantasy Cruncher and do its thing here. So we're going to pick some stacks. We're going to go through it. We're going to kind of see what the shape of it is. Mike's putting in some of those rules in the background there. I see on the screen. So he was adding some of those. But Gun, when we're going to take, if we're just going to pick a stack here and kind of build out from Fantasy Cruncher and see what it's going to put together, I think it makes some sense to maybe take a look at the big board here and go through what some of the top stacks this week are. What are you seeing in terms of, we'll start on DraftKings, in terms of the go-to stacks, the ones that you really want to get to on DK this week? Are there any that really stand out to you from either a point scoring probability or a leverage perspective?
Yeah, usually I go to that far right column, hit leverage, and see what's popping. And number one being San Francisco. They're a really frustrating stack because I hate playing Jimmy G, and it's just the Deebo Samuel sweepstakes. So maybe it's a little easier to focus on KC and Buffalo right below them, but we're still getting some decent leverage scores there, huh?
Yeah, and that's really what stood out to me this week is, you know, some weeks you see it, some weeks you don't. But this week in particular, the top teams on our board in terms of probability of success, probability of being in the top stack, are also carrying the best leverage numbers. In some cases, that's because it's kind of a pay up spot, right? Like you see KC, all right, you've got a $7,600 quarterback salary and a $6,300 average skill player salary. That combines up pretty quickly. But you get to the third ranked team there, San Francisco, only a 3.2% ownership share on Jimmy G at the quarterback spot, only 5,600 at the quarterback spot with a 6,300 average on the skill players. That's pretty affordable, and it's still leaving a ton of leverage. So I think some of them get under-owned a little bit just based on that. But yeah, with San Francisco here, with KC, with Buffalo up at the top of the board, there's a lot of room on these top stacks and some of these high-flying, highly total games. I would throw Dallas in that mix, Green Bay a little bit into that mix as well. So a lot of room to work with the best teams on the board, the teams where we expect a lot of the scoring. We mentioned at the top that that Dallas KC game. I mean, that's going to be an obvious spot for a ton of people to flock to, with the idea that, yeah, it's positively leveraged right now, but it's also going to be the highest total ownership on the quarterback, highest total ownership on the skill players, particularly within the stack with the skill players. You assume that translates back and forth with Dallas and KC on both sides. People are going to be using a lot of run back skill players in that game. Does that put a little tarnish on it for you in terms of there's just going to be, even though it's positively leveraged, there's going to be so much public weight on that game in terms of the raw ownership that maybe you move it down a couple spots, maybe focus on Buffalo, focus on San Fran a little more?
Yeah, and I think man, Buffalo's a little easier to settle on. I do think with the KC Dallas game, I think the pricing, the salaries and whatnot is gonna really make it tricky, and maybe you get creative within the chalk. Um, but I like the high predictive value in some of these team usage rates. That's why I shy away from like San Francisco, because it's like Debo, and oftentimes Jimmy G doesn't really get there. With Debo get there, maybe George Kittle coming back will start heightening some of his games. But yeah, I guess I would be a little bit more skittish versus the field, but I'd probably be looking for opportunities to get most unique within the same game, whether it be like a Dalton Schultz in the tight end spot over like a Travis Kelce, or something a little bit more creative, just to say I'm in the same spot but opposite the field. But generally speaking, no, I think I'll be pretty focused on the top 5, 6 teams listed in this top stacks tool. Green Bay and Minnesota, I think, will be a fun one because it still makes sense for that game to put up some points, and there still has some easy to target players in that game, right? Devontae, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Cook, and then AJ Dillon. Nobody's going to play him this week, right? So it's an easier, maybe it's a more economically and fiscally reasonable game to stack. But really at the top end of this top stacks tool, I'm in agreement with just about everything in the top 6.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's sometimes it stands out as being obvious. Like, yeah, we want to go to some of these high-powered offenses, particularly when they're playing each other, particularly when they're in these heavily total games. But it makes sense, right? If this is where we're expecting the scoring, this is where we want to focus a lot of our lineups, and we can look to some of these contrarian spots. But as we look down the board, kind of it goes hand in hand with what we were just saying. You can scroll down the board to a team like I don't know, let's say Carolina with Cam coming back. He's getting 6.6% ownership, one of the higher ownership totals in the mid range, but that's forcing only a 2.4% probability to be in a top stack. That's really forcing the issue to get to a guy who's just kind of coming back and kind of an unexciting stack through most of the year. Tremendous skill players on that team, but if you're getting to that at significantly negative leverage, it just doesn't pay off most of the time. You need to get really different in other spots to make that work, and you've got to hit those dart throws more often than not. So yeah, I like just locking into to some of these high-end teams. You mentioned the Green Bay and Minnesota game. I think that might be a fun one to build a stack with. Which one of those teams would you rather take? Is it Green Bay that with Aaron Rodgers at the quarterback spot, and we'll lock whichever one you choose in and build some DK lineups here?
Oh man, I feel like I do this a little solid on the salary and just go Kirk. Be a little different here.
All right, a little differentiation. I like it. I like it. So we'll go to the Minnesota side of the board, Mike. So why don't we lock in Kirk Cousins there, and we will dash off 50 lineups on DK, and we'll kind of see what we get here. And there is very little chance I'm going to be able to see that in this Zoom window. So, Mike, we want to make sure that we're. I think we would want a run back play from this game, right? Gun with the firepower on both sides, 47 point total, and only a 1-point spread in this game as well. That's what I like to look for as well. Is not only the high point totals, but a game that's expected to be closely contested, a little bit back and forth. We want to take advantage of these weapons in this game. So, I would look for at least one from the opposing team as well, there, Mike.
I'm sure AJ Dillon's going to fall naturally, but yeah, if we force in like a Devontae or I don't know, a Tunyon or not Tunyon, Mercedes Lewis, somebody, probably Devontae. We want some Devontae in our life.
Yeah, look, I mean, a lot of these lineups are going to come up with some Devontae, with some AJ Dillon, probably a lot of lineups with both of them. Is that a combination that you would want in your Green Bay stacks? Like, let's say if you were going with Green Bay and you had Aaron Rodgers in there, how many lineups do you want that have Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and AJ Dillon in them? Is that a combination that you're looking to get to, or is that a combination that, for differentiation's sake, you might be looking to push away from?
Man, Dillon is just there's so much value baked into him. Just one touchdown and maybe 80 yards and a couple of catches get you there. I guess I would want a little bit of overlap just for the chance that Dillon catches a touchdown. But I think I'd be hyper focused on Devontae Adams and Rodgers, and then maybe in the on the Kirk side of the game stack, I can be a little bit more bullish on the Adams and Dillon overlap, because for Rodgers to truly get there and be optimal, probably has to throw 3 or 4, right? Versus the rest of the field. So I think it makes a little bit more sense to have more Dillon and Adams in the Kirk lineups than vice versa.
Yeah, have those guys coming as the run back. Is it a situation where you would use 2 guys from the Packers in a run back situation where you had and just kind of go full on overload from this game in Kirk Cousins line?
I say just because of Dillon's price, probably in this case, yeah, it makes a little bit more sense. But I would say even if we didn't set a rule, it's probably going to happen pretty naturally just based on Dillon's projection this week versus his price point.
Yeah, I think that's one where he's just going to rise up through there. Something that I like to do with groups in that situation is kind of control that to a degree, at least, so that if I'm building out, 200 lineups that are stacking this game one way or the other, I'm not going to get 85% of them with only Davante Adams and Dillon together. I'm going to create a negative boost to Dillon so that I sliced into that ownership a little bit. And then when I put it into my sorter, say I'm only getting the top 15 out of that 200 anyway, a lot of them will still have that combination. So you're not taking it out, but you're thin slicing a little bit more. So Mike, if you want to kick that one off, I don't know if you ran that crunch here. I'm going to jump back into the window. So are we showing that up on the screen here? Let's see what we got on. No, looks like my gorgeous face. All right. So yeah, I think we're going to rerun that one. Cool. All right. So when we zero in here, so yeah, I mean, we're seeing a ton of AJ Dillon on top of the board there. That looks, I think that's in the 80s there, and we're bouncing around a little bit. So Mike, scroll down and yeah, show me the pairings there. So let's jump into see what receivers we're getting. So we're getting Davante up at the top of the board, 100% Davante here. So this is where our randomness is going to come in, right? You're going to want to assign randomness. I go pretty heavy on randomness, particularly for receivers. That's a question that people ask a lot. I'm not going to give the number that I use because it's a custom number that's created in my my model here, but I like to get pretty heavy on it so that, again, in a case where I'm getting out to hundreds of lineups, I'm getting a little bit of shimmy in the distributions. I'm not getting 200 out of 200 of these lineups have Davante in them. I want a lot of Davante in this. Is that something you're doing, Gunn, or are you just kind of taking, all right, I'll take the 100% of Davante and not worry that I'm not getting, say, Randall Cobb in any of these run back spots?
Yeah, I definitely assign randomness. One thing I'm noticing on this crunch is there's way too much KJ Osborne. Obviously, Tyler Conklin, I'm fine with that. But I would like a little bit more, the most Justin Jefferson, and then below him Thielen. And then Osborne would probably be somebody I don't want to hit more than maybe 20 to 30%. And then even that feels a little bullish.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing a similar situation with KJ Osborne there, 3,400 salary on the DK slate, 5,200 on FanDuel. That's going to force him into a lot of these situations just on value alone. And you're right. That's one, again, where I would be controlling that with groups. I'd be controlling that with randomness and trying to get a thinner slice of my KJ Osborne shares. Maybe it's a matter of bumping up Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen in groups when you get Kirk Cousins as your key player. And you just want to crunch and recrunch and go through these things, guys. And the way I do it for those groups articles is I do this for every single team over and over and over again. I set groups, I tweak, I run crunches until I get each team kind of distributed the way that I want. And then I put it all together and sort it through the wash. So looks like we're getting, so we shaved off some KJ Osborne shares there, but we're definitely getting a ton of him. If we wanted to just take a real shortcut to it, we could put a 35% cap on each one of the 3 big receivers there. That would be a shortcut to seeing how this goes. But let's just take a look at some of what else we're getting in these lineups too. Mike, if you scroll down to the player window again, where we can see on the left some of the player distributions. And looks like sorry, I was looking in the wrong window. I was looking in the YouTube one on my behind time. And and adding thumbs is another way certainly to do it here. What I want to see though too is, in addition to we're focused on this game, but we also want to see some of the pieces that we get around this game too when we make these lineups too. Because if you end up making too much concentration on a stack on a game, you could weaken all your other positions. So I want to see what are we getting for some of these other guys? Who are other people that you're targeting, Gun, that you're looking to fill in around the edges of these stacks? Is it like a James Conner? It looks like we're getting a good amount of Gaskin. Looks like we're getting some David Montgomery. Who are some of these guys for you that you want to see populating into the rest of these spots?
Yeah. So I guess in my early projections, I have pretty decent numbers on T. Higgins at 5,400. I mentioned Darrell Williams' potential explosion game in Kansas City. He's pretty cheap. I guess Jalen Wong. There's a couple of 5K guys. None of them are like specific, especially like great, but I do like guys like Higgins and Darrell Williams. I guess they would give us some salary retrieval that would perhaps give us the salary to kind of create some of the lineups that we're really looking for here, showcasing some of the big boys in this Green Bay game.
Yeah, and it looks like as we've got a nice zoom in on the player pool here so we can see it a little bit. So it looked like we were getting to a good amount of T. Higgins in there. We were getting some David Montgomery and some Gaskin at the running back spot, a little bit of Connor. We're getting some Deebo Samuel from that, the one main target on that San Francisco offense that we expect to be the third ranked stack on the site. So we're getting a good distribution of players, a few of the banged up Cleveland Browns in here as well. So it looks like a good distribution of players that work in and around that Green Bay stack, that Minnesota stack. So I don't dislike those. It is a situation where, like, if you're looking just at that first lineup that we've got on the board there, 2 Vikings, 2 Packers skill players along with Cousins. You get Jamar Chase, Travis Kelce. That's not a bad lineup. It is a little bit heavy on that game, though. I typically like to go, one skill player stack with my quarterback and a 1 run back. I don't get too deep into 2 run back situations, which is why I asked that about AJ Dillon. But we're seeing the value there. Is there maybe a value running back that you would swap in for AJ Dillon into that lineup that you have in mind on the DK slate? I know we're here to talk stacks, but just
I would maybe nominate either James Conner, or we already have some David Montgomery. It looks like either Darrell Williams or getting exposure to that big game. So like that's another way to kind of attack that game while we're on another game. And boy, would it pull some steam out if a lot of those touchdowns came from a running back instead of the Kelce's, the Tyreek Hills, the Mahomes. So maybe get Darrell Williams at 5,400, steal 2 touchdowns for us. And then we already have some David Montgomery, but he profiles pretty well.
And that makes a lot of sense to me too. What you were just saying is, if we're gonna pop a guy in there for our value running back, grab him from that other game and take that scenario where that game doesn't go off through the air, and now you're gaining leverage over the entire field in 2 different ways. So really like that. So jumping back over to the chat here, it looks like the overwhelming pick by the chat is to take a look at the Cincinnati Bengals on this one. So why don't we do that? Why don't you talk us through the Burrow and the Bengals here real quick while Mike gets us teed up to do that one. And Mike, just keep it on DK. We'll look at it on DK. That's so you don't have to switch it up. But go on, talk to us a little bit about Cincinnati and what you're seeing for them this week.
Yeah, Cincinnati at the Raiders, 25-26 implied total. So neither team has really stunned us on defense, and the Bengals are looking a lot more like last year's defense in the last couple of weeks. So hopefully we get a little shootout there. And I love putting Burrows back against the wall because he's got offensive weapons, man. T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd. We've even seen the big Uzoma game. So there's a lot of guys that we can put with Joe Burrow, and it's not even unlike Joe Mixon to catch and shoot 1 or 2. So I definitely love and agree with chat that this is a fun stack, to say the least, with plenty ways to go, and a couple of run back options you could feel okay about with Renfro, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs. So yeah, I like that game quite a bit. Good job, chat.
Yeah, well done. 50.5 total in that game too. So it's the second highest total in Vegas, a 1-point spread. So it's a close game, highly total, definitely one we want to get to. Looking at some of our game script adjusted metrics, which is a spot on the site that I love getting to kind of take a look at where the pace is going to be, where the passing is going to be each week. Both of these teams right at about 60% passing, game script adjusted. So really like the spot there. And good job by chat. So as we're looking to make a Burrow stack here, what's your kind of focus? Do you have a preference between the 3 big receivers? Are you looking to work Joe Mixon in? Are you looking to work the tight end in? What are you primarily focused on within that Cincinnati stack?
So if I had to rank the pass catchers, it would be Jamar Chase, T. Higgins as my top 2. And then I'm probably leaning a little bit more Uzoma than Boyd, but it's not. I guess it's really closer than it should be. Tyler Boyd, I feel like if you look at his game log, I've played him the weeks where he didn't get 7 and 8 targets and he got the 3 and the 2. And then I'll never forget fading Awesemo in the showdown, and he had like 2 or 3 touchdowns and ended me real quick. So yeah, but 1 and 2 is definitely Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and then I'll kind of spin the wheel, make a deal on Boyd and Azuma past that. And then Mixon's kind of an interesting case here because in order to correlate as strong as we want, I want him to catch some some passes for touchdowns, and he can do that, but he can also just have a strong game on the run. So if I focus on this game stack, I might have a little bit more Mixon in the Derek Carr versions of the game stack versus the Burrow, but I wouldn't have no Mixon with Burrow.
Yeah, I'd work in a little bit, averaging 2.9 targets per game. So there's a little bit of involvement in the passing game. And certainly, like you said, could just bust through on the ground for you and pay it off anyway. But yeah, that's probably where I'm going to get my shares. And typically that's what I'll do is I'll take the running back as a run back play in more shares than I will in putting him in the group. So with 5 minutes to go while we're waiting on that crunch, I did mention Jock Market a little bit earlier, guys, but got to talk about him a little bit more because I'm actually having a lot of fun playing on the site. If you watched us, maybe a few months ago, you saw me do a promo read, and look, sometimes I just got to read what they write here, but I'm playing on the site now and I'm enjoying the hell out of it. And I'm actually making money, which I love. I took advantage of our Awesemo promo code. It's just the word Awesemo, all in caps. It got me $50 bonus on my first deposit, and I've just ratcheted that up along the way. So it's been fantastic. It's a lot of fun. What they did, they turned fantasy sports into a stock exchange. So they've got a pregame IPO. You bid, you try and grab some shares of players before the market goes live. Market goes live during the games. You can buy, sell, and trade shares of your players during the game. So if you get in somebody cheap, and then all of a sudden they score a few points in the early goings. Let's say it's in basketball, they score an early touchdown. Say it's in NFL. You want to bail out of those shares because you don't think he's going to finish that strong. You can sell them off. You can get rid of those shares, cash out right then, buy something else. It's a fun, different way to play fantasy sports, guys. You can download the app on any of the major app stores. Promo code's Awesemo, $50 match deposit bonus. Jock Market is running a first market guarantee. They will refund your losses in NFL or NBA, any NFL or your first NFL or NBA market up to $100. So it's a loss-free spot. You're getting 50 extra dollars to play with. Makes so much sense, guys. Check it out. Jock Market, really fun site. Gun, with just a few minutes to go here, we've got some results probably from our crunch, but I can't get back to that screen for some reason. So talk me through what you're seeing within the crunch we just ran there, if you can.
Yeah, so on the Bengals side, in lineups that have Chase and Higgins getting some run back here with Darren Waller, which is something that you probably have to battle the opto with because it's probably going to feed you Travis Kelce, maybe Conklin. So you have to do the adjustments there to make sure you're getting a healthy amount of him. And then Hunter Renfrow, somebody that I'm fine with unloading in these Bengals stacks as a top run back option. I don't really have much like past those two. Bryan Edwards, I think, and as we get a little deeper into these stacks, and then if you're really, really looking for that home run call, so Deshaun Jackson.
There it is.
Deshaun Jackson might get 1 or 2 deep bombs, and hopefully he doesn't hand this ball back.
But I mean, that is the kind of play that can win you a tournament, though, right? You get $3,400 Deshaun Jackson in there. Yeah, it's going to be a couple of targets, 2 targets per game so far, but 16.19 yards per target, 259 yards in a TD. All you need is Deshaun to break off one of those crazy long ones. They've got Zay Jones in the offense, 11.21 yards per target, and Bryan Edwards, 11.13 yards per target. The Raiders' deep passing attack has been a thing for most of my lifetime, and they don't seem to be going away from it anytime soon. So they like to have those shots that they can take once or twice a game. I definitely would have it in my pool here, coming back with Burrow lineups. Is this a game where you'd be getting to the other side, building Carr stacks and Raider stacks as well with some Cincy runbacks?
Yeah, absolutely. I could put Carr, like I said, with Renfrow, with Waller, with the lesser Bryan Edwards, Deshaun Jackson, Zay Jones, guys like that. But yeah, I like these offenses because I do feel like I can have a concentrated usage on a core of players. And then Josh Jacobs, I think I would only have him in the Mixon side, but I guess last week he had 5 targets, and I'm not used to that. But if that's going to be a thing, maybe he catches and shoots one. So maybe I don't completely roll him out of Carr lineups.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't caught that yet, but that's one I'll usually catch when I'm doing my groups article, which I got to get to later on. So everybody check that out on the site. We are basically out of time here, Gun. This flew by. This was fun, man. I appreciate everything. Just wanted to say, everybody hit the like, hit the subscribe. We've got a ton of shows coming up. Awesemo Fantasy Football Show on the Fantasy Football Channel with Eitan, Savoca, and Tara. I'm coming back with Kaufman at 3 o'clock on this channel for Yahoo dedicated NFL show. We've got a Prize Picks College Football show later on with Vanek and Gajeski. We've got the NBA Deeper Dive at 4:45 with Lofty and Adam. We've got NBA Live Before Lock coming up at 6 o'clock with Josh and Emac tonight. It's going to be a loaded slate of content, a lot of stuff going on. So check it out. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. If you finish in the top 3 in a contest with more than 5,000 people, send us a screenshot on Awesemo Hall of Fame. We'll get you a free month set up. Gun, this was a blast, man. Good luck, everybody, this weekend. Take us out of here, Mike.